Luke chapter 22. Luke chapter 22 will begin this morning, verse 4. That's where we left off last week. We noticed that Luke tells us that the Passover is getting close. Matthew chapter 26, Mark chapter 14 tells us that it's only 2 days. But the Passover is drawing nigh. The chief priests, the scribes, they're worried about how they can get a hold of this man Jesus. They despise him so much, they envy him so much that they want to get rid of him. They're tired of fooling with him. He's there for the Passover in Jerusalem, but they don't want to arrest him and cause a commotion during Passover. There's too many people there. It says that they feared the people. But then in verse 33, we have that the idea that Satan has entered into Judas Iscariot, and he's one of the 12. And we discussed this last week. This has been a subject of interest to myself, and I've wondered about Judas all my life. Judas was a scapegoat. Judas had no alternative. Judas was handpicked to betray the Christ. He's one of the 12, but he was condemned to begin with. He was condemned at birth, Andy, and of course none of those things are true. We saw last week that Judas, like all the rest of us, he had at least one human flaw. And we've all got human flaws that we have to deal with every day. But Judas had the flaw, apparently, he was a lover of money. He was greedy. He liked to have money. Well, we know that Judas was he carried the bag. He kept the bag. Whatever money that these folks had, he had control of it in the bag. I don't know that Judas ever bought anything out of the bag for himself. I don't know that. But apparently he had the money bag. Maybe he wanted the money bag, Linda, because he cared about money. Well, yeah, we care about money, but not in the same way, we hope. Yeah, we do. Money's necessary, but the love of money is what gets us into trouble, the greed for it, the want for money.
Judas was, it don't say, but he was partly from the tribe of Judah.
Okay, I'm not sure about that, but he probably so. Yeah.
That's what historians said. He was raised in the tribe of Judah. He's out of the tribe of Judah.
Right, okay. But this idea of Satan entering into Judas and making him do that, the devil made him do it, wasn't Judas's fault. That's not true. We all have things in life that we have to contend with. We have to try to control those things. Judas was possessed by his own demon. And he failed to or control that demon. He let this demon, this love of money, this greed for money for himself overtake him. And of course, we can all be possessed by demons today. It doesn't have to be a lover of money, just a lover of things, lover of life, a good life and a good, comfortable life. And I'm thankful for the good, comfortable life that I've been Pat enjoying, that we all enjoy. But I hope, Linda, that's not my first priority.
If I had a big old bass fishing boat, I'd be on the lake right now.
Really?
I had one.
If you had a bass boat,
I have a big old nice bass boat like some people's got, but
yeah,
I'd probably skip the bay.
You'd let it overtake you, huh? That bass boat. Well, that may be true. A lot of people do that. A lot of people do that, and that's what we're talking about. One Sunday with a bass boat, that won't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, he could be here tonight and fish this morning. But of course, those are the things that we've become involved in, and before we know it, the Lord takes second place. Notice 1 John chapter 2.
Ricky, where you're going, that will respond to what you just said about miss it Sunday morning, get it Sunday night. I think that's an attitude that we developed in the church today that has been kind of used as an excuse. So I'll make it up next week, or I'll make it up tonight.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
We make plans to miss services.
Yeah. Yeah.
That shows a priority.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it becomes a habit. That's what we do, and so it's
we make plans because it's convenient.
Yeah. Does our conscience become seared?
Absolutely.
I think it does. We become past feeling. And we can justify it. It's okay. It's okay. It won't hurt us. Well, it will hurt us. For 1 John chapter 2 and verse 15, John the Apostle here tells us, love not the world or the things that are in the world. Because notice this, if any man loves the world, The love of the Father is not in him. Judas tried to serve two masters. He was in close relationship with the Son of God, was there with him lots of times, and yet he still had this desire to have possessions, to have money for himself, greed, whatever you want to call it, and so that overtook him. And he failed to serve two masters. He thought he could, but as it goes, you're going to love the one and hate the other, and usually it's the one that you need to serve is the one that's going to lose out. If we love the world, then the love of God is not in us. God will take second place in our life. But you know what Satan could not accomplish through these Pharisees, that they had so much hate and so much envy for this man who called Jesus. He succeeded through one of the 12. Through one of the 12. That would never happen to me.
Would you say that again?
Satan succeeded. He could not succeed. The Pharisees couldn't figure out how to portray or get a hold of this man Jesus, and so we're gonna use Judas now, one of the 12.
The demise came from within.
Yes, it came from within. It wasn't the devil made him do it. No, but he saw an opportunity, didn't he, to make some little change?
No, he didn't see it. If you look at Luke 24:5, I believe it says he sought opportunity.
He sought opportunity. Yeah.
He looked. He sought it out. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
Premeditated.
Yeah. Which we're going to get down here into Luke chapter 22. He promised. I'll have him for you.
I'll deliver him.
I'll deliver him. Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to see that he went there with the intention of getting some money. What would you give me, Linda?
Yeah, I was first saying, he probably did take money out of the bag that he took.
I'm thinking he probably did too. Yeah. But I don't know that.
Well, he justified himself.
Yeah, and we can.
And the Lord wouldn't say that.
I'm so glad I've got the checkbook for the church. So glad. Oh, I'm so glad. But our soul is important. And Judas sold his soul for 30 pieces of silver. Esau sold his for a bowl of beans, wasn't it, or something like that. The devil spends his full time in pursuit of our soul. The Lord gave his life on the cross for our soul. How important is our soul to us? The devil's always after it. But sometimes I don't take care of it myself. I don't realize the value.
Have you ever noticed, not only in Esau's case, but Judas's case, they took the lowest offer?
Yeah.
They could have held out. Judas took about 500 pieces.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in just a minute. He sold him for 30 pieces of silver. Now, notice verse 4, Luke chapter 22, it's verse 5, ain't it? Well, verse 4, and he went his way, and he communed with the chief priests and captains, how he might betray them unto him. They're going to get together and figure out how we can get this man Jesus into the hands of these Pharisees. How did he know? How did Judas know that they wanted him? How did he know to go to him privately? How did he know that they were afraid to arrest him publicly? Had Judas been an eyewitness of some of these confrontations?
Absolutely.
Sure, yeah, he knew. Just back up to Luke chapter 20. Luke chapter 20, we have Jesus here in Jerusalem. Now he's teaching in the temple. Verse 2, these chief priests and scribes came up there, and verse 2, that they said, they spake to Jesus, saying, "Look, tell us by what authority you're doing these things, and who was it that gave you this authority?" They were a little bit indignant about that. Here's this guy from Nazareth. He's not a priest. He don't even have an education, and he's in here teaching people, and we've heard that he does miracles, and But notice verse 19, Luke chapter 20, and the chief priests and the scribes the same hour sought to lay hands on him. And they feared the people, for they perceived that he had spoken this against him. Verse 20, they sent spies and all this type of thing. Judas was there. Judas knew all that. You go to John chapter 11. Judas knew full well what was going on here. John chapter 11, verse 47 and 48. Turn one more page. 47 and 48, and gathered the chief priests and Pharisees a council and said, well, what are we going to do? This guy's doing a lot of miracles. If we leave him alone, everybody's going to believe on him. Notice verse, where did it go? 53 and 54. Then from that day forth they took counsel together for to put him to death. Notice verse 54. Jesus therefore walked no more openly among the Jews, but he went thence into another country in the wilderness, into a city called Ephraim, and there continued him with his disciples, which included, of course, Judas. Judas was well aware of all this that was going on. And he's figured out in his head, well, you know, they want him that bad, and I could use a little spare change here. So,
notice verse 57 of John.
okay, what did it say?
Now, both the chief priests and Pharisees had given a command that if anyone knew where he was, he should report it, they might seize him. He put out APB on Jesus.
Yeah.
Anybody seen the Jesus shall report him.
Yeah, but they all left town, went to Ephraim, and Judas went with them. All his disciples followed him out there, but he got it in his head, they don't like this guy. But you know, Judas had been there. You know, Judas had forgot all he had heard and he'd seen. He was there, John chapter 11, when Lazarus was raised from the dead. He saw Jesus walk on water. He saw the water turned into wine. He was there when Jesus fed the 5,000. And he pushed all that to the back of his mind. You know, and we're aware of those things too. I'm not an eyewitness to it, but I believe those things happen. Would I betray Christ today? I could. Yeah, that can happen. You know, Judas, as we saw last week, he could preach the gospel of Christ. He could cast out demons. He could perform miracles.
He renewed that when he was fallen away, because he crucified the flesh of God, Son of God afresh.
Yes. Hebrews chapter 6 and verse 6. I think that's where that is. Remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about the Apostle Paul, 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 27. Paul said if he did not discipline himself, Paul was a human, he was an apostle, but he was still human. If he did not discipline himself, it didn't matter if he'd preached the gospel all of his life, he could still be lost. Paul could be lost if he didn't keep himself under control. And of course, that's what Judas failed to do. That's what I could fail to do. Notice 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 13. I was fixing to go there and I failed to go. I was supposed to have been done going. 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 13. You know, the Lord puts us in situations that we just can't get out of, Linda. It's not my fault. No, Andy's shaking his head, no. 1 Corinthians 10 and 13, there's no temptation that has taken you such as common to man. Everything that I've gone through and endured and been tempted by, everybody else has done that before me. You know, this is nothing new. I think that I'm being picked on. No, you're just like everybody else. But notice, God's faithful. He's not going to suffer you to be tempted above that what you're able, but he's going to be with that temptation, also make a way for you to escape. But I have to use the escape hatch. I have determined in my mind that I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to participate in this. I know better than this, and I'm not going to do this. And so I'm going to go on. I'm going to discipline myself. That's what Judas failed to do. I think his conscience had become seared. He was past feeling. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 19. Judas was not a scapegoat. And I've learned that about this class, Linda. I've wondered about that all my life. He had no choice. Yeah, he had a choice. He could have resisted, but he just could not keep himself from getting the money. Just had to have the money. Anyone have any comment? Notice verse 5, Luke chapter 22. They were glad, and they coveted to give him some money. They were glad to see him. Mark chapter 14 and verse 11, it says when they heard that Judas was there, they were glad to hear that. Judas is here. Isn't he one of the 12? Judas, that's one of the 12. Wonder what went through their mind. You know, here's one of Jesus' chosen 12 now. He's walked in here, and he's willing to help us get a hold of him. One of the chosen 12. That Jesus guy, he's not a very good judge of character, Brenda. He chose this guy. And here he is, he's ready to cash in, turn him on. He's supposed to be a prophet. But he chose this guy. If he's a prophet, he ain't much of a prophet because he should have known who this guy was, and here he is ready to turn him in. Notice Matthew chapter 26. Matthew chapter 26 in verse 15. Judas asked him there and Judas, verse 14, then one of the 12 called Judas Iscariot went unto the chief priest and said unto them, what will you give me? You know, there's something in it. We got to have something in it for us. We got to get something out of this, whatever the deal is. What will you give me? You know, he went there with the intention of getting paid. Got to be paid for this. And notice verse 15, and they coveted with him, Judas, for 30 pieces of silver. That sounds like a lot to me. 30 pieces of silver. I'd like to have it today, Andy. Colt?
The equivalent of the 30 pieces of silver was only $90 in our modern money.
Is that all it is?
$90.
It'd be 90 more than I got, though, Colt. You got to think about this stuff now. So it ain't much, huh? It's not much. No, it wasn't much. Even for them, you know, he made a deal for 30 pieces of silver. They're glad, they're happy for this to fall in their lap. Glad to see Judas. Judas was glad to get the money. Everybody's happy. This is a win-win for everybody. You know, nobody's a loser here, well, except this Jesus guy. But he's sort of a nut. We need to get him off the street anyway. What's the significance of this 30 pieces of silver?
It was prophesied and fulfilled.
Okay.
Zechariah, the 11th chapter, and verse 10. And I took my staff beauty and cut it in two that I might break the covenant which I made with all the people. So it was broken that day. Thus the poor of the flock who were watching me knew that it was the word of the Lord. Then I said, if it is agreeable to you, give me my wages, and if not, refrain. So they weighed out for my wages 30 pieces of silver. And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, the princely priest. Zechariah's prophecy is being fulfilled not only in the throwing of money, but in the amount given.
Okay. And I forgot about that. Yeah.
I came up with that's flat. That's always on.
Yeah. Okay. Go with me to Exodus chapter 12. Exodus chapter 21. This is part of the law of Moses. Now, the law of Moses contained more than just the 10 Commandments. It was just laws for everyday living. And old Edgar there, he's got a bull that's constantly getting out of the pasture, and he will run over you, Linda. Edgar's crazy bull. And Edgar knows it. Edgar knows it. Notice chapter 21, verse 20. I'm in 31. Exodus chapter 21. I'm getting back there now. And verse 29. Exodus 21, verse 29. If Edgar's bull there was wont to push, he wanted to hook people with his horns in the time past, and that's what he's a record of doing. And it's been testified to his honor. We've tried to tell Edgar, but Edgar will not keep him in. Now he's killed a man or he's killed a woman, and the ox is going to be stoned, and his owner Edgar, he's going to be put to death too. That's pretty harsh now for somebody that's got a bull that's bad to hook and run over somebody, but that's part of the old law. You know, this is concerning just civilians. Skip down to verse 32 though. Now, what about a slave? Slave is less than the regular average citizen. Now, verse 32. If that same bull of Edgar's is going to run over a manservant or a maid servant, Edgar's going to give unto their master 30 shekels of silver. He killed my slave, Edgar, so you're going to have to pay me 30. He killed my slave. You're going to have to pay me now 30 pieces of silver, and we're going to put your bull to death too to get him out of the way. The price of a slave back then, during the time of Moses, was 30 pieces of silver. And of course, that's what they've offered now. Judas, now as we go back to Luke chapter 22, you'll be fine. The price of a male or a female slave. Was that sort of showing contempt for this man Jesus? Possibly, you know, I'm reading some stuff in here now that may not be there.
He wasn't worth much to the chief priest, was he?
No. And Judas, you realize now, Judas, we're glad you're here. Look, we're glad you're here. The guy's not worth much, and you know that. A slave is worth 30 pieces of silver. That's about all we can give you for him, you know. Did Judas jump at it? Good enough for, you know, that's good enough for me. You know, he's not worth more than a common slave. You know, he's a liar. He's an imposter. He's a fraud. We just can't give you any more than that now. So, you know.
Well, one that prophesied back in, I did look at that, back in Psalms or Proverbs, it was predicted that he would be sold for a certain amount of money.
Yeah, that was Zechariah. That's what Andy just read that for us in Zechariah. Yes. And the money would be used to buy, what was it, the potter's field or something there. Yeah. Yeah, that was prophesied way back before it ever even happened. But, you know, they're going to offer him the price of a slave. You know, that's, you know, he's probably not even worth that, Judas. But Judas is happy. You know, 30 pieces of silver. He agreed to that. Notice verse 6, Luke chapter 22. And he promised. Judas promised and sought opportunity to betray him unto them in the absence of the multitude. I'm getting 30 pieces of silver out of that. It may not be but $90, Colt, but that's more than I had. You know, you got a bird in the hand here is worth more than this empty hand over here. He promised, agreed to what they offered, agreed to look for a private opportunity. He understood we don't need a bunch of people around publicly. There's a lot of people in Jerusalem on Passover. Let's not create a big scene. Judas knew all about this man's popularity. But Judas knew what his daily habits were. Go back up to Luke chapter 21, verse 37. Luke 21, verse 37. During the daytime, Jesus was teaching in the temple. At the nighttime, Jesus went out and he went to the Mount of Olives, the mount that is called the Mount of Olives. Daytime, he's in Jerusalem teaching in the temple. Nighttime, he goes out to the Mount of Olives. Notice John chapter 18. Did Judas know all that? I mean, Judas is doing that. He's with Jesus in the temple the daytime. Out in the nighttime, we're going back to the Mount of Olives. John chapter 18, verse 1, and when Jesus had spoken these words, he went forth with the disciples over the brook Cedron, where was a garden, into which he entered, and his disciples, and notice that verse 2, Judas also, which betrayed him, knew the place where Jesus oftentimes resorted thither with his disciples. He knew where he was going. He'd been there with him before. This ain't gonna be hard to figure out. You know, we need a place privately. Well, I know where he goes every night. And just you know, y'all just be there tomorrow night, and that's where we'll all be. And you know, we'll just arrest him then and there. Anyone have any comment?
Notice verse 3 of that context.
Okay, go ahead and read it. I was.
Then Judas, having received the detachment of troops from the chief priest.
Okay.
Judas, take a few boys with you where you go out there. We'll give you some help, Judas.
Yes.
So Judas didn't do it alone.
No.
The chief priest knew. They sent some troops with him.
Yes.
Take a couple of these deputies with you. Y'all go out there and take care of that for us.
Yeah. Judas was in the lead.
Yeah.
He led the way. And when Jesus saw him coming, what would he, who do you seek, friend, or something like that? And how did Judas betray him? Linda, go ahead.
You know, I can't help but think, what kind of personality did Judas really have? I mean, was he really a great guy? Everybody liked him?
On the surface, yeah, he was just like me. I think he like all of us. On the surface we sort of look okay, but what traits do we have that we don't control? I think he was just like all the rest.
I think he was a kind of an outgoing great guy.
Yeah.
But he was a devil.
He had a human trait that he could not control, and we all do. It may not be that; that'd be something else. But we all have traits that we can control. But a lot of us say, "Well, that's not my fault. That's just the way the Lord made me, and so it's not my fault." That's not true. That's not true. Anyone have any comment before we go to verse 7?
The word Issachar, Judas bought bothers the word Jesus in it every time.
Yes.
If they didn't put that there, we wouldn't know who he was. They were many
Yes.
Judases back then. They were like John and Judas and all that.
You're right.
So they specify what one we want to look at.
Yes. I'm not sure if it was Iscariot his last name or something. I'm not sure about that. I don't know. But yeah, it's always Judas Iscariot, so we'll know which Judas or Jude that he's talking
There were
about.
two Judases in the 12 apostles.
Yes, yes. Notice verse 7. We're going to change gears here a little bit now. I want to discuss something that I've been interested in forever. Maybe I'll figure something out here. Verse 7. Then came the day of unleavened bread when the Passover must be killed. The day of the Passover is finally arriving. We spoke last week or the week before, the Passover was to be on the 14th day of the first month of their calendar year, whatever the month that was. For us, it's going to be on the 14th of January. Remember what immediately followed the Passover on the 14th of January? 15th of January started the 7 days of unleavened bread. Yeah, 7 days of unleavened bread. I want us to notice now, and those were two different feasts. But if they're going to have the Passover, if they're going to observe the Passover, they're going to have to observe the 7 days of unleavened bread. If they're going to observe the 7 days of unleavened bread, they had to have had the Passover feast before it. But those two different feasts, and they were different feasts, they were outlined back in Exodus chapter 12 or somewhere along in there. Two different feasts, but they were linked together in that they followed one another. And what I want to notice now is sometimes when they talk about the Passover, they're talking about both of them together. And that's going to help us to understand something that I stumbled across and I've wondered about all my life. But go with me first of all to Deuteronomy chapter 16.
Since the day is Easter, most people says this is the Passover right now. We don't look at it like that, but Passover is the day that he rose from the
That's what was last week.
Passover this year is April 22nd.
Say that again now.
Passover this year is April 22nd.
April the 22nd.
How can you separate Passover from Easter? How can you separate Passover from the resurrection morning? You cannot. Scripture ties it together.
No.
Modern calendars is wrong.
Yeah. Well, our calendar, of course, different from their calendar.
That's true. But even so, quote, today in the religious world is Easter Sunday. This is the Sunday morning he came from the grave. But they're going to celebrate Passover 22 days from now, 21 days from now. Passover had already occurred when Jesus rose from the grave.
Yes. And that's what I want to get to here just a minute. There's something in John 18 and 19 that says the Jews that betrayed him had not observed Passover. Why? Jesus had already observed Passover. But notice the time now for Passover. This is what they, had to observe. Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 4. Let's begin verse 4. Deuteronomy 16, verse 4. There shall be no unleavened bread seen with you in all your coasts 7 days. Neither shall be anything of the flesh which thou sacrifice the first day, at even remain all night until the morning. I think there when he's talking about when you sacrifice the first day, that's Passover. Remember they were to roast the lamb over an open fire, and they were all to eat it, and whatever was eaten was what? Was burned up on the fire.
Whatever wasn't eaten.
Whatever was not eaten was burned on the fire. Nothing was to be left all night until the morning, the conclusion of verse 4. Verse 5 and 6 now. Thou mayest not sacrifice the Passover with any of your gates, which the Lord giveth to thee. Verse 6, but at the place which the Lord your God shall choose to place his name there, that's Jerusalem, there shalt thou sacrifice the Passover. Notice this, at even, at the going down of the sun, at the season, the time which you came forth out of Egypt. That'd be the first day, 14th day of the first month. That's when they came out of Egypt. But at the going down of the sun on January the 14th for us, going down of the sun at even, we are to observe the Passover. If we're them. Whatever's left over, come daybreak, it's all to be burned up. Nothing's going to be left of our commemoration of this Passover. Passover, or their days, began at 6 o'clock in the evening and went to 6 o'clock the next evening. The Sabbath day began on Friday evening at 6 o'clock, and it would conclude on Saturday evening at 6 o'clock. That was the Sabbath day. Passover would begin on, to get this straight now, Thursday evening at 6 o'clock, and it would be over at Friday evening at 6 o'clock. I think I'm saying that right. And at Friday evening at 6 o'clock, these 7 days of unleavened bread are going to start then, right after Passover. Everybody got that real clear as mud now? But notice now. Go with me, if you would, to
Before you leave, you remember you didn't get a verse. 6 days shall leave unleavened bread. On the 7th day, that's the 7th day after Passover.
yes.
Note that before you leave your auto.
Okay, John chapter 18. We have here Jesus, he's been arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane. Did Jesus observe the Passover before he was arrested? When he went out to the Garden of Gethsemane and Judas had betrayed him, they've already observed the Passover. The Passover's past. It's early in the morning now, remember? And they're going to bring him in, John chapter 18, and I'm not trying to create any doubt here. I don't think this is a contradiction. A lot of people jump on this as a contradiction. No. We need to understand what some of their terminology is. John chapter 18 and verse 28, they took him to Caiaphas, the high priest. Caiaphas is going to take him to Pilate now. John chapter 18 and verse 28, then led they Jesus from Caiaphas unto the hall of judgment, and it's early, and they themselves went not into the judgment hall, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. Passover's past. It's early in the morning now. Whatever was eaten for the Passover is supposed to have been burned, and Jesus has already observed the Passover. These folks hadn't observed the Passover. These are the Jews now that have arrested Jesus. Notice John chapter 19. And again, we're not so in doubt here. We'll notice something. John 19 and verse 14 now, and now he's before Pilate. Jesus is standing before Pilate. It's the preparation of the Passover, about the 6th hour. I thought Passover was past. Andy, go ahead. Go ahead.
That is the 7 days following the Passover that occurred on Thursday night. Arrested on Friday morning and executed on Friday.
And when they talk about the Passover,
it's not a one-day event. We think about it as a one-time event.
Yes.
But you could not have Passover you could not, by God's authority, Deuteronomy and Exodus, have Passover without the 7 days.
Right.
So yes, I agree there was 2 different events, but it was one celebration.
Right. When they talk about Passover, they're talking about that feast plus the following 7 days of unleavened bread. So those things it's interchangeable. They use those terms interchangeably. Sometimes we talk about the Christmas season. Well, that might include New Year's Day for us. We don't say that. But the Christmas season involves all those holidays that we can get through with it and get it behind us, and we're through with that for another year. But, we understand that. We understand that, but we don't say that. Well, sometimes when they talk about Passover, they're, as Andy just said, notice Matthew chapter 26 and verse 17, where's it at? 17, Matthew 26 and verse 17, Now the first day of the feast of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus saying, Where will you want us to go to prepare the Passover? They're talking about the Passover, but they're also talking about the first day of the feast of unleavened bread. Well, that to them, the Passover was included in the feast of unleavened bread. What did they have for the Passover? Besides the lamb that was roasted over the fire with herbs, but they also had unleavened bread. They didn't eat leavened bread at this Passover. So, with these disciples, this is the first day of a feast of unleavened bread, and they're wanting to know where we're going to observe the Passover. They're talking about the whole thing together. They understood that. But and as I read all this, and I tried to prepare myself to teach all this, some of these knowledgeable, scholarly men think that Jesus observed the Passover the day before. I mean, that doesn't even make sense.
If truly today was the resurrection morning, as Easter's proclaimed, we would be in the celebration of Passover today.
Yeah. Thankfully, we're not. Thankfully, we're not. Go with me back to John chapter 19. And again, I'm not trying to sow doubt. I'm trying to get us to understand that sometimes what they understood, we don't really see it that way. We're thinking, well, this is Passover and that's the other. Well, they're talking about it all together now. John chapter 19, notice verse 31. They wouldn't go into Pilate's judgment hall because, this Passover and the days of unleavened bread are there, and they can't defile themselves by going into this Gentile place. Verse 31, the Jews therefore, now Jesus is dead on the cross now. The Jews therefore, because it was a preparation. Preparation for what? Well,
Feast of unleavened.
Yeah. Back up to verse 14, it was the preparation of the Passover. Verse 31, Jesus is dead on the cross now. He observed the Passover. He's dead on the cross. Notice the problem here, because it was a Passover, the body should not remain on the cross on the Sabbath day. Notice this, because that Sabbath day was a high day. That Sabbath day is going to be a different Sabbath day from the other Sabbath day. Why is that? It's going to be the first day of unleavened bread.
Exodus 12, verse 16.
What's it say?
On the first day there should be a holy convocation. On the seventh day there should be a holy convocation for you. No matter work will be done on them, for they must eat, for they may be prepared by you.
A holy convocation is a gathering of people for a specific religious purpose. We hear people today in other denominations, talking about this as the high and holy Sabbath. Well, that's what they're talking about here. This is a different Sabbath. It's a Sabbath, but it's the Sabbath after the Passover. That made it a little bit different. And they were going to have this holy convocation. There was no work done. Everybody's going to needed to prepare themselves for this 7 days of unleavened bread. And that's what he's talking about there. The Jews, therefore, because it was the preparation, they had to get ready. They would sweep the room clean. And we're going to see when Peter and John are sent to Jerusalem to prepare for the Passover, they had to make sure there was a lot in this preparation. You wouldn't just go rent the room and here we are. That there's a lot of things for them to prepare. But it's the preparation, and they're in a problem here now because, they can't leave this dead body of a Jew on the cross because the Sabbath is approaching. Jesus died at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Wasn't it something like that? Or
9th hour, which will be about 3 o'clock.
Okay. The Sabbath is going to start at 6 o'clock that evening. They got a lot to do here now. They got to get him down off the cross. Notice Deuteronomy chapter 21.
The time frame even confounded Pilate because Pilate thought he's already dead.
Yeah.
It's only 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
He's dead already. So he sent somebody out to make sure that they were telling the truth.
Yeah. But now he's dead. They can't leave this body on the cross. Deuteronomy chapter 21, beginning verse 22 and 23. Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 22. If any man hath committed a sin worthy of death, and he's put to death, and you hang him on a tree. Now, not that he's hanging by a rope, but he's been crucified on the cross. Verse 23, his body shall not remain all night on that tree, but you shall bury him that day. For he that is hanged on a tree is accursed of God. Bury him that your land be not defiled. Don't leave a dead body on a cross. Bury him that day. And so they're going to have to get Jesus now off this cross because the preparation and this high holy Sabbath day is approaching. It's going to start at 6 o'clock in the evening. They got to hurry up and get him buried. They can't leave him hanging there. And it ain't much time left for this preparation. So on this high and holy Sabbath day, this holy day of rest, get him off that cross and bury him today. Anyone have any comment? Notice verse 42, if you're still in John chapter 19. There laid they Jesus, therefore, because of the Jews' preparation day, because the sepulchre, that burial was right there. We can hurry up and bury him right there, get him buried. We got to get him buried because of this high, holy Sabbath day, this day of preparation that's coming. It's a very special Sabbath. They got to get him in the ground. Anyone have any comment? But I've worried. I've often thought about that. They hadn't eaten the Passover. Jesus ate the Passover. They did not eat the Passover. Why didn't they eat the Passover? Well, they eat the Passover. I think they had eaten the Passover the same time that Jesus ate the Passover. At sundown that night, and by morning everything was burnt up, and now we've got the day to arrest Jesus. Well, they arrested him that night after the Passover. You know, and then they had to get him down off the cross. Mark chapter 15, let's see what that says. That was a good one. I'll overlook it. Mark chapter 15 and verse 42. Now when the even was come, because it was a preparation, that is the day before the Sabbath. The day before the Sabbath, preparation for the 7 days of unleavened bread. At evening, they had to get things in order, get him buried, get all the leaven out of their house.
Would you have been Joseph of Arimathea?
That's taking a chance, Eric. I don't know. I don't know.
Because as I studied the lessons this morning as well as last week, Joseph was afraid.
Sure. I would have been too.
Would you have been the character Joseph of Arimathea? I think I asked that question last week.
Yeah.
The one who married Jesus.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to think about that one, you know.
It says
There's so much you can do.
He says he took courage.
Yeah, he took courage. He had to swallow it real hard and try. Yeah. That would not have been a popular thing.
And I think he went privately. He went privately to Pilate. He didn't go publicly.
Yeah, that's true too. But I'm sure everybody knew he got him down and buried him. I would think.
Only him and Nicodemus.
Well, might have been, but you know, there's a lot of people around there. A lot of people walking by. Remember, they walk by the cross wagging their head, and you know, and there he is. What a fool. Yeah, but at any rate. Next week, Lord willing, we'll begin with verse 8. He's going to send Peter and John to make preparation. We'll talk about the preparation that he had to make. Just go find a room in there. Here we got a room. Come on, sir.
I want to say, in reading throughout the Bible, the last time the Passover or the bread of unleavened bread is mentioned in, as far as I know, in Acts 12th chapter when Herod killed James and put Peter in jail because they didn't crucify him right then because the days of unleavened bread was, or Passover, was nigh. So he kept him in jail until the Lord freed him.
Right.
So that's the last time I know of that the word Passover or unleavened bread, as far as I know, is mentioned in the New Testament.
That might be true. He didn't want to kill Peter just the same way they didn't want to kill Jesus because of all the people that were there. Let's get past the holiday, and then we'll execute him. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyone have any comment? Thank you for your help this morning. I've enjoyed the class. Verse 8 next week.